Welcome to Ask an MS Expert Veterans Program. I'm Ashley Lee, and I'm the host of the Elite Warrior Project podcast, which is designed for veterans and active duty service members diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I am a Navy veteran diagnosed with MS in 2017, and since then, I have dedicated my time and energy into supporting, empowering, and educating veterans who have been diagnosed with MS. I want to thank you for joining us here today. The National MS Society is committed to offering a place to connect and ask questions to MS experts on topics impacting veterans affected by MS. We will also highlight important resources and services available through the VA. Throughout the program, please post your comments and questions into the question or chat box, as we have MS navigators available to answer questions and provide resources throughout the program. Research has shown that in addition to being essential to general health and well-being, exercise and lifestyle physical activity are helpful in managing many MS symptoms. Today, we will talk about the impact exercise and lifestyle physical activity have on MS, how to overcome exercise challenges, adaptive sports and recreation programs, and resources for the VA and the National MS Society. Today, we are talking with Dr. Benjamin Dons, a physical therapist and clinical specialist in neurology at the John Cochran VA in St. Louis, Missouri. Dr. Dons provides care to veterans in the Movement Disorders Clinic, Multiple Sclerosis, and ALS multidisciplinary clinics. He treats veterans primarily with neurological and vestibular dysfunction in the outpatient setting, but also provides specialized tele-rehab to veterans with neuromuscular disorders. He is the outpatient mentor for the St. Louis VA Neurological Residency and specializes in adaptive bracing for individuals with gait dysfunction. In addition, Dr. Dons also serves as an advisor at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis for third-year physical therapy students. I'd like to ask Dr. Dons to join me on camera. Welcome, Dr. Dons, and thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Ashley. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you taking the time.
Well,
exercise and lifestyle physical activity are essential to general health and well-being, and we know it provides many benefits to people living with MS. The National MS Society convened a group of experts to develop exercise and lifestyle physical activity recommendations for all people with MS, regardless of their ability. According to these recommendations, what is the definition and difference between lifestyle physical activity and exercise?
It's a good question. So typically, exercise is something a lot of we're all pretty familiar with. Going to the gym, running, riding a bike, all those things. I would, consider those exercise. The distinction between lifestyle physical activity is it can be anything that is bodily movement that you're engaged in for more than 30 minutes, and it could be as a few minutes a day or a few times a week. The new guidelines I think you brought up talk about how exercise and lifestyle physical activity are both beneficial, and they're both safe for all people living with MS, regardless of their ability level. And I really like that distinction just because not everybody can go to the gym, and not everybody wants to go to the gym. And so just considering different activities you can do on your own is really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So how exercise or lifestyle physical activity is recommended per week?
So it's recommended that you engage in about 150 minutes per week, which breaks down to around 20 to 30 minutes a day, and you don't have to do them all at once. But typically, what we consider exercise would be anything that you're working at about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. That's generally the guidelines we use in our clinic and what you can find out there.
Okay, great. We heard from Dave, who isn't sure if he can do 30 minutes consecutively. Is it just as effective to split up the time throughout the day?
Yes, you know, that's the conversation I have with a lot of my patients, and I actually recommend breaking up those activities into smaller chunks. So maybe 30 minutes is your goal a day, and you do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, 10 minutes in the evening. One of the things I talk to my patients about, if they have equipment at home, you know, dedicating a corner of your house or your kitchen or your living room or your bedroom to that particular activity. So when you see that spot, you know that's I'm going to do those 10 minutes if that's what you can handle. If you can handle more, you know, then that's great too. You know, a lot of people have an exercise bike and that's where they go to exercise. It's the same idea. And so finding something that you can do, you also enjoy at a particular spot. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So as you mentioned previously, the new guidelines highlight that exercise and lifestyle physical activity are beneficial and safe for all people living with MS, regardless of their ability level.
Mhm.
What are some of the benefits people with MS experience when they incorporate lifestyle, physical activity, and exercise to their daily routine?
So there's a lot of great research out there. You know, the thing that I think uh, is most common is you find an improved mood. People generally, you know, when they have accomplished something that day, that typically makes you feel good. But the research that you'll find in rehab literature that I look at and what I use for my patients is, you know, there's a lot of improvement. You can improve strength, you can improve your balance, you can improve your endurance. You know, there's as you exercise, your brain actually releases neurochemicals that protect the nerves. So there's a protective effect in your brain, but also I think that helps you preserve your cognition and some of those other things that are really important. So, you know, there's a variety of things, and I think that, you know, each person a little different, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Shelley wrote in and wants to know if exercise helps someone with MS manage their symptoms.
So yeah, that's a great question. It is a great way to manage your symptoms. I am a physical therapist and I don't prescribe medications, but the one thing I tell my patients that I can prescribe is exercise. And I think if we could bottle up, you know, exercise into a pill form, it would sell like crazy because it is the one thing it's important to keep in mind when you're thinking about your MS is that it is affecting your nerves, your brain tissue, and other areas of your body. Your muscles can still be trained. You're able to maintain strength. You're able to train those muscles to have better endurance. And I think that's key to managing the disease and preventing that cascade of events which lead to deconditioning and further disability. And so, you know, real quickly, you know, this question brought up something that I was at a conference in Nashville for the Consortium of Multiple Sclerosis Centers, and they did this program. One of the presenters was talking about an MS boot camp, and patients engaged in essentially 2 weeks of like intensive rehab. And for some of these people, they did more in a day than they had in the weeks prior. Um, and at the end of it, they looked at the improvements, and they saw people had better moods, like I was mentioning, better strength, better energy levels, and they were sleeping better, which I think is really important. They were going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. And I think there's something to that exercise routine that can help you not only improve these other areas of your life like sleep, but can also really help with some of those MS symptoms that just come up, the random ones, the ones that you can't always control.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's an important point you made. Thank you. What is the impact of exercise on other chronic illnesses like diabetes and hypertension that can exacerbate MS?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, as you no, hypertension, diabetes, and all those other illnesses are, have a lot of the same effects where you can feel terrible. Some of them are a little more silent, like the high blood pressure, but exercise has a benefit for those areas too. When I'm working with someone who doesn't have MS, but they may have those issues, exercise is, again, that's what I prescribe. And I would say about 10 or 20 years ago, a lot of people would say, don't exercise if you have MS because we can exacerbate these symptoms. Or if you're exercising, keep it really mild or low intensity because we don't want to exacerbate your system. But I think that's not true. And I think that they're seeing like, hey, the exercise is actually having secondary benefits for things like high blood pressure, diabetes, and other chronic illnesses that lead to further dysfunction. And I think that's just a really good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. So earlier you brought up how MS could affect mood and other cognitive functions. Can you tell us about the recent research that looked at the impact of exercise in veterans who have PTSD and what was learned?
Sure. So cognitive function and mood changes are extremely difficult, and probably one of the aspects of this disease that's so difficult to treat. I would be overly optimistic if to say that exercise is going to eliminate all your mood and cognitive changes that are associated with your MS. But I think there's a lot of research that really looks at the impact of routine exercise on mood, depression, and cognitive abilities. People engaged in routine physical activity, and especially in the group settings, have a more positive outlook. Furthermore, increased participation leads to better quality of life and greater enjoyment overall. And I find that veterans who have a hobby or a job or a volunteer program that's meaningful tend to stay active and incorporate more of these things into their life. There is an article, and a few articles discuss the benefits of exercise in individuals with PTSD. One in particular that was done was a qualitative study that looked at veterans who had done an exercise-based group program. And there was a positive effect on their feelings of fatigue. And as I read the article, the big takeaway for me was that the veterans who were participating were really felt that accountability to meet their goals. And the benefits of working as a team is ingrained in veterans. And I think that the biggest problem with MS is that it isolates us. So, whether it's social isolation or physical isolation where you can't get to other people, I think it's really important to think about exercise in that, I wouldn't say always group, but in a relationship with someone else too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. In order to experience the benefits of exercise, it has to be a regular part of a person's lifestyle. Dr. Dons, what are the goals of lifestyle physical activity and exercise for someone living with MS?
So I would say the goal is to do things that you enjoy. I find patients, they like, well, I did this exercise where I just did the leg raises, and it's not something people enjoy. So whatever, your lifestyle activity is, you should enjoy it. It should be something you need to do on a daily basis. I have a veteran who enjoys building furniture. It gives him purpose, and it's something that keeps him active. I have other people who are not able to get out of bed. And so for them, just being able to roll, and there's some things that we work on in bed that allow them to transfer with greater ease, or maybe it allows them to, do their own dressing. Those kinds of things are really important. And everyone's goals are going to be a little bit different, but it should be something that you enjoy or makes your life easier.
Okay, thank you. So what are some recommendations to our audience on how to create realistic goals that they can reach and sustain, and how can they adjust these goals over time?
So the first thing to do would be to make a list of what are you trying to accomplish? Is it to walk around the park? Is it to join a gym? Or is it to stand long enough to prepare a meal? Those are very important goals. And then I would say that the next step would be develop that plan or routine to accomplish those goals. If this is not a personal strength of yours and it's not for everyone, talk to an MS navigator or see a trainer or a physical therapist or someone that can help you develop that individualized program. I think that's really important because your goals will change over time. MS is never static. If it was, we wouldn't be having all these conversations. And so having someone you can talk to is really important to be able to figure out, those realistic goals and adapt.
Yeah. Dr. Dons, how can someone know if they're doing too much or not enough exercise? Are there ways people can track how much lifestyle, physical activity, or exercise they're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's always one of the challenges for me, especially as I'm working with individuals who maybe have just come out of a relapse. What is too much? What is too little? That will change. Like I was mentioning earlier, we generally recommend 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. That's what you would want to exercise at. So, you can use the activity trackers the wristwatches, you can use the Fitbits, or a lot of times if you have a phone, they have a little app on there that can keep track of your movements throughout the day. And again, I mentioned the heart rate. If you don't know what your heart rate is, you can ask your MS navigator as a resource, or you can look on heart.org and kind of make that calculation. There's a lot of really easy stuff out there. But just knowing what your heart rate should be at, I think is a really good start. The other scale that I use is called RPE, and it goes from 0 to 10, and 10 is like you're running a marathon, and 0 is like, I'm resting. And so knowing where your heart rate is, I think, and how hard your body is working is not something we're all good at. But again, I go back to talking about having someone to work out with, or an exercise partner, or a trainer, or somebody who knows you, and that they can help you develop a program, so you have a program that you can do, but they can also help you track your exercise. I think we're all driven by numbers, and I am, just like that. I like to know what I'm doing, and so having someone that you rely on or that you trust that can kind of also say, hey, today you need to tone it down. We had a busy day yesterday. And practicing some of those energy conservation techniques would be good.
Yeah, great. So the new lifestyle, physical activity, and exercise recommendations for people living with MS were tailored by disability level using the EDSS, the Kurtzky Expanded Disability Status Scale. Can you share with our audience more about this scale?
Sure. So the EDSS scale was created to measure the level of disability in persons with MS. The purpose was to create this objective measure to quantify the level of functioning that we could use it across the healthcare system at kind of diagnosing that person's level of MS. The scale ranges from 0 to 10. Typically, this is something that your neurologist will give you a number. So if you have questions about it, I would talk to your neurologist about it. But just a real brief overview, the first levels, 0 to 4.5, refer to people who have a high degree of ability to walk, and they may be able to walk with little or no help at all, whereas 5 to 9 generally refer to the loss of that ability to ambulate. And so depending on where you are in that scale, it's not necessarily a scale where I say, hey, you're at a 5, I'm going to work you out until you're a 3 or a 4, or a 2 or 3. It's not that kind of a scale. Physical therapists like myself, we use different measures to determine those walking abilities. But it's a great scale to kind of understand where you're at, and then you can use that. Actually, the MS, the National Society on their website has a really great resource, which can kind of give you a general look at like, hey, my level of ability is, really high. So what can I do? What's safe for me to do? And they've given some good recommendations there, from running to hiking to cycling. But also for those of you who have, a higher number, there's a lot you can do too. And maybe it could be gaming, it could be a stationary bike or things like that. But yeah, if you're looking for that skill, it is on their website, but you can also look it up online, or just talk to your neurologist about, where you're at.
Yeah, thank you. So wherever they fall on the EDSS scale, people with MS can safely participate in some form of exercise or lifestyle physical activity. Dr. Dons, can you give us some examples of exercises and lifestyle physical activities for people based on ability level?
Sure. Yeah. So starting with people with, who don't need any support at all, people who may still have fatigue, may still have a little bit of imbalance, or maybe have some memory issues. Moderate intensity exercise, it could be resistance exercise like lifting weights, it could be aerobic exercise like using a treadmill or elliptical or something in the gym. Those are all great exercises. I like that type of exercise. Typically when I'm working with people, they're not at the highest level. But I would say one of the things I noticed, like a lot of core exercise is really helpful too. And so I like programs like Tai Chi or yoga, and those can be tailored to your ability level. But typically, when you don't have as much, you don't need as much support, there's a little bit more you can do. People who have MS and also may need a moderate amount of support, like they may have a cane, they may have a walker, or they may need help getting in and out of their bed. Those type of people, there's a lot of adaptive equipment. There's a lot of programs that we'll talk about a little bit more that have adaptive equipment. But just to start, a swimming or aquatic program can be great. A lot of my patients love getting in the water. It's important they keep the water temperature low enough that it's not going to, overheat you. But I would even recommend a supervised gym program if you have access to a trainer or someone who can help you into the gym. There's a lot of really great ways to do that. But you don't even need to go to a gym at that level. I would say, you can, if you enjoy something like gardening or cycling, there's like I was mentioning, there's some adaptive ways to do that too. For people who need a high level of support, who spend most of their time in the bed or a chair, typically I recommend bed exercises. We have resistance bands I'll sometimes use with patients, or typically what I recommend when you need a little bit more assistance is your exercise should be functional. It should be something that helps you accomplish your goals that day. If your goal is to prepare a meal or possibly get dressed, honestly, that can be considered your, that type of activity for you. And so a lot of times patients will set up, an exercise routine in their bed, and that exercise routine can kind of be in combination with getting ready for the day. I know sometimes it can take people a very long time just to get out of bed, and that's, exercise you should not feel bad if you can't, lift something. It should be kind of something that helps you move. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So we know that for people living with MS, incorporating exercise to their daily lives can be challenging. There's multiple factors that can present themselves as barriers that may impact a person's ability to stay active. Dr. Dons, what are some of the most common barriers people with MS face that may influence their decision to engage in lifestyle physical activity and exercise?
Sure. Yeah, I think the first one is lack of motivation. People may not feel like exercising. I find myself like that a lot, and especially when you're dealing with MS, the disease that some days you wake up, or the way I describe to my patients, you get a tank of gas every day. Um, and sometimes you get a half a tank of gas, and you don't get the opportunity to refill that tank of gas every day. So if you run out of gas, you're done. And so I think just the way that your disease is affecting you, that can be a major barrier. And I tell my patients, don't be hard on yourself, because some days you just need to take care of yourself and rest, and that's okay. Um, but a lot of times, lack of space. People just don't have the space. They don't have someone to help them to work out with, or life gets in the way. I think those are really important things that are, hard. And I mentioned it earlier, but I think isolation is a big issue. A lot of people isolate themselves from their friends or family, and that those sometimes are people that can be, I would say, positive supports that can help you. Maybe you did set a goal a month ago, and now you're kind of like, it's easier to kind of stay away from people. And I think that in a way that can be a big barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there additional or different barriers that veterans with MS may face?
Yeah, I think now I'm not a veteran myself. I grew up in a military family, but I have gained some experience. And one of the things that I think is hard for veterans is kind of goes back to that isolation a little bit, but the trauma that veterans have experienced in the past, and that trauma can look like a lot of different things, um, is hard. And I think one veteran described it to me like this, that you can tell someone about that experience, and they can get a snapshot of your life, but unless they lived that life and gone through what you've gone through, they're never going to see the full picture. So that sense of just not being known, is hard. And I think for a lot of veterans that deal with that, they deal with it alone. That can be really a difficult thing, because the trauma that they've experienced, whether it's from military exposure or something else, I think that, yeah, there is something going there. And prior to COVID, I would have told everyone, you need to get in a group, and we here at the VA have a lot of really great group programs. But now that we're in COVID, that looks a lot different depending on where you're at. So I just think, to answer your question, it kind of comes back to some of that isolation of not being known and having some experiences that it makes it hard to connect with others, which is why I love working at the VA, because I think there's a lot of ways for veterans to connect with each other. Not always, yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I can definitely relate to that, as well as probably most of our audience here today. So thank you. Fatigue is a common symptom in MS. So what are some strategies for handling fatigue during exercise?
Sure. So, and I want to expand on that a little bit. So when I think of fatigue, I think of two types of fatigue. So fatigue, there's the physical exhaustion of fatigue, and that can be really, your body is exhausted. You only got that quarter tank of gas today, and now you're really worn out. The other type of fatigue is the mental fatigue. That can be the stress of dealing with a disease that is constantly changing, or it could be, something that happened last week that you're dealing with still. That mental fatigue is really, I think, sometimes the overall burden that kind of prevents us from getting out and maybe engaging in an activity, a lifestyle, physical activity, or an exercise routine that you wanted to do. But I think kind of identifying the differences between those two types of fatigue is helpful. So to your question about how can you overcome that fatigue experience, which is, man, it is the number one thing that I think my patients will say just they're dealing with. There's a lot of different strategies. I'm gonna give you a few examples. So one particular person I've been working with for a long time, he struggled to develop that exercise routine. And we actually worked virtually throughout the pandemic when things were really, we were really trying to limit contact. And he did great. He was able to start doing some things at home, and eventually he decided he really wanted to get a trainer. And he was able to find a trainer who did one-on-one sessions and was able to maintain some, healthy precautions. But he worked on getting into that routine, and he was able to establish that routine at home. So even though he may have missed a day or had a bad day, he was able to get back into that routine because he had a kind of a consistency. And once he was able to get into the gym, we really didn't see each other too much. I checked in a few times, but he was really it was a big motivator for him. It was an investment on his part. He used his own resources to get that trainer, and he was able to get in person and meet the times that he wanted to meet at, which isn't always easy here at the VA. But he saw a big improvement in his exercise tolerance, strength, and his endurance, and those were all part of his goal, and he had set those goals at the beginning. Not everybody can get a trainer, and not everyone has the resources for that, and I think it's really important to keep that in mind. Like I said, I like working here at the VA because we do have a lot of great virtual programs. And every VA is a little bit different. We do virtual group workouts. There's Tai Chi groups, there's yoga groups, and there's different exercise classes. If you're not connected to the VA, or that's, it sounds like a big commitment, there's a lot of great resources on the MS website, the MS Society's website. I think that they have started the Pathways to Wellness, which is a really cool resource to kind of help you decide, what you can do, what is safe for you. And so, finding finding a program that fits your needs, I think, can help you. And I know we're talking about fatigue here, but I think having a specific path is really important for you. And so the other example that I had was just going to really go into more about how you can connect with another person. So, I think we get energy from each other. Some of us do. And I think that when it comes to that secondary fatigue, with that mental fatigue, having another person to encourage you is super important. And so kind of using that as, is a way to motivate you and out of those low moments.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Dons. Amber wrote in saying she was in a regular exercise routine when she experienced an exacerbation, and now she has not been able to exercise for several weeks and she's frustrated. What are some recommendations for someone who recently had a relapse that interrupted their exercise routine and now needs to incorporate some modifications?
Sure. It's a hard question to answer, but the first one would be, what was Amber doing prior to her exacerbation? That would always be my goal. Like, let's get you back to where you were. But that isn't always where you should start. So I think that the first thing that Amber should do is to kind of get an idea of what her baseline is. And you would want to see a neurologist or a physical therapist who's trained in helping you identify that. Can also, like I said, find a trainer or someone who has that background with MS, because I think that's super important. MS is such a terrible thing, but it's helpful to be able to talk to someone who has an idea of how the disease is progressive, but also there is the ability to make improvements after you've had a relapse.
Yeah.
So,
For some people living with it, An increased body temperature can worsen MS symptoms like fatigue and weakness. What are some tips for keeping cool while being active?
So it's a great question. I think that one of the things that I recommend, one of the things I usually go to is using a cooling vest can be great. There's a lot of different types of brands out there. If you are a veteran and you find yourself, hey, I'm mowing my lawn and I'm getting overheated, it takes me all morning, or it takes me a few days to mow the lawn because I just get so heated. Talk to your provider, talk to your primary care provider. Ask them if you can either if they'll put in a consult for it, or if you have a relationship with your neurologist or physical therapist. That's something that we do pretty frequently. We try and find the right cooling vest for you, and they're pretty easy to issue. That would be the first thing, like the easy thing to do. Another tip would just be to stay hydrated and don't plan your activities at the hottest part of the day. If you can try and do those things in the in the morning or in the evenings, that would be best. And if you have to, just break that activity up into a smaller chunk. As the person mentioned earlier in our talk, can you still exercise for short bouts? Yeah, absolutely. I think preventing your body from hitting that total fatigue point is super important. So you can exercise at higher intensities, but you don't want to hit that point of no return because you're not going to be able to recover as quickly.
Yeah, I know as veterans, sometimes we have that mentality where we like to push until it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like no pain, no gain doesn't actually always work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm slowly learning that myself. All right, so for the past 5 years, you've been working with ALS MS clinics to expand rehab services to veterans who live rurally through telehealth. Since COVID-19, many VAs are now telehealth capable, which is a great benefit to people, especially those who live in rural areas or who have difficulty getting to their appointments. What are the advantages of tele-rehab and telehealth exercise for individuals who don't have access to specialty care?
So the benefits of the tele-rehab, well, there's a lot, and I'm a pretty big advocate for it. I think because over the pandemic, I saw how well we were able to see veterans, or how well we were able to care for veterans. Our neurology department, and I'm sure departments all over the country, have gotten a lot better at it. So if you haven't had a virtual visit and it's offered to you, it's not as bad as it sounds. Now, you do need to have reliable internet. You have to have a phone or a computer with a camera. Those are really helpful. But it gives you access to a level of specialty that you wouldn't normally have. So if you are in a rural area and you don't have a neurologist that you can go to, and sometimes the specialists in the rural communities, my father-in-law lives in a rural community and he has to travel over an hour just to see a specialist, and he doesn't have MS, but he struggles with that. And I think the VA being able to provide some of that specialty care to people in rural communities is very helpful, because we have the insight, we have the resources to be able to connect you to the right people. And sometimes, having that conversation is helpful. I don't advocate for virtual rehab only. I think that there needs to be some component of in-person visits, because you don't always get the full picture.
Okay, great. What specific types of rehabilitation therapy can be delivered virtually?
It's a good question. So, for me, working with veterans who have neurological injuries, we do a lot of balance exercises. We do strength, endurance. I tend to, when I'm working with someone, try and establish kind of a home program that they can do. I also do orthopedic evaluations, and screen for common injuries, musculoskeletal injuries, and try to help adapt their environment. So types of rehab, I also do home visits. Essentially, when we're on the virtual screen, I try and do a home safety eval, make sure your home is set up safely or you have the equipment you need to, operate at home.
Excellent. So what does a virtual physical therapy assessment and treatment look like?
Sure. So what I typically do, and this is a great example, I am working in a room like this where I have a table, and I like to have people set up their camera like 5 or 6 feet away so I can see you. At times I might have people put their camera down so I can see your feet and see your legs. And I'll have you do exercise. I'll have you sit and stand, and I use special outcome measures that kind of give me a gauge of how strong are you? How long does it take you to sit and stand 5 times? How long can you stand with your feet close together? That gives me a lot of information.
Okay, great. How should someone best prepare to make the most out of the time?
So making sure you have a phone or reliable internet is helpful. If you think, hey, my house is spotty internet, my brother has much better internet. I've had patients go to their daughter or brother's house. If you're uncomfortable with technology, it's so helpful to have a caregiver or family member nearby who can either operate the phone, so you just focus on being a patient and telling what's going on, and that is helpful. So having someone there to help you, those are typically the best case scenarios. And then I like to have people like in a big open room so I can see you walk. I do like to watch how people walk, and it helps give me a better picture of how you're doing.
Okay, good. And how do you tell if your patients are making progress through a virtual visit?
So going back to some of those outcome measures, the test that I use pretty frequently is called the 5-time sit to stand test, and I just time how long it takes you to get in and out of a chair 5 times. Other measures that I use are a balance test and how long can you stand with a particular, with your feet together or your feet in tandem. That's a helpful way of measuring balance, and it's been validated and studied as ways of measuring balance. So I think, those are primarily the ways that I would say I do that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Dons. So we're in the middle of summer, and it can be a great time to commit to exercise or explore new sports and activities, and many are now accessible through adaptations or modifications. What are adaptive sports and recreational activities?
So adaptive sports would be any kind of sporting activity that requires, some sort of modification. I think people are familiar with the wheelchair games. Right now, we are watching the Paralympics, and we're seeing lots of really cool things that people are doing with their bodies using adaptive equipment. Now, recreational therapies, again, I have had the opportunity to volunteer with our recreational therapy department here at the St. Louis VA. So for an example, it was 2019, last time we were able to do these outdoor activities in groups, we were doing a ski group, and we were taking veterans out down a local ski hill, and it meant for some veterans who were blind, they had someone with them. Some veterans who had TBIs or brain injuries, they had a partner with them. And for those who were more involved or maybe in a wheelchair, they may have had 2 or 3 people with them, and there was a lot of really interesting adaptive equipment we could use to help get them down the mountain, or here in Missouri, the hill. So, there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a few different programs that are run nationally, specifically for all people with disability, but there's a special focus on veterans because they do have some grants that help fund veterans to engage in these activities. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute.
Yeah, excellent. We heard from Tony, who is interested in learning a new sport, but he's not sure what he will be able to do physically. How does someone know what kind of activity or sport is right for them?
So that would be a good question for, um, I think for you to have that question, what do you enjoy? That would be the first thing. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of veterans enjoy fishing, and there's a program called Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing, and it was a group that gets people together and goes out, find a river, and they fish. And actually, one of my veterans with MS, that's probably one of his favorite things to do. Is to when this group gets together, he's able to go out there, and his participation is subsidized by this grant program that the federal government has for veterans. So finding the right activity, it could be that you need to have a visit with a physical therapist and kind of figure out what are your ability levels, what are some of the things that you like to do. I think that's a good place to start. Here we have a recreational therapy department, and typically you can get a referral to that from your primary care. Our department is an outpatient department, and there's a lot of VAs that have outpatient recreational therapy teams. But that's just one resource that you could check out or look into.
Yeah, thank you. So Dr. Dons, I know the VA has programs for adaptive sports, rehabilitation, and wellness. Let's talk about some of them and who can access the services. First off, what is the Move Weight Management Program?
So the Move Weight Management Program is, it's open to all veterans. I think you need a referral to get into that program from your primary care doctor. So the program itself is set up for veterans who are interested in managing weight loss, managing nutrition, and kind of figuring out how can I make a plan to lose weight. That is the primary goal of that program. Typically, right now during the pandemic, we are meeting in groups and a lot of phone conversations. But once you're referred to that program, you will meet with someone from the Move program, and they will kind of help you align what your goals are for weight loss, and then give you some ideas of ways to do that. And one thing that'll be included in that is a visit with a nutritionist. But,
okay.
Yeah.
What about the Whole Health Program?
And the Whole Health Program I'm really familiar with. Here at the St. Louis VA, we have a pretty robust program. But the Whole Health Program is designed to kind of incorporate all components of life into healing. A lot of times with chronic pain, we're seeing people who, pain is not just one area. Even with MS, there's a mental component, there's an emotional, there's a spiritual, there's a social component to it. And so Whole Health hopes to kind of address a lot of those different areas. Now, when you are referred to the Move program, you start out with your primary care. Now, anyone can refer you to the Whole Health program, neurologist, physical therapist, your primary care doctor. And typically, what will happen is then once you've made that referral, someone from the Whole Health program will contact you, and they call them, it's a Whole Health coach, and they kind of go through the resources that are available to you. And it can include yoga, Tai Chi, it can include acupuncture, and there's also kind of a fitness part of it too that you can get into. But those resources are different nationally, and a really great way to kind of figure out what your VA has. You can talk to your MS navigators. Some of those resources are online. They're not super easy to find, but I would start there. Ask your MS navigators. They have a lot of these resources for you. So.
Awesome. What can you tell us about the Adaptive Sports Grant Program?
Right, and so I was mentioning that earlier. The Adaptive Sports Grant Program is I think that's the first place that I would look. if I was interested in adaptive or recreational rehab therapies. I mentioned that I participated or volunteered with a group here in St. Louis who is doing adaptive skiing, like snow skiing. And they use that grant program to fund or make it free for veterans to join their groups and their group outings. And so across the country, there's a number of different programs. And I tried to pull up a few that are national, and it depends on your state and your city. One of them was Adaptive Adventures. And their goal is to provide, progressive outdoor sporting opportunities for people with, physical disabilities. It's not specific to multiple sclerosis, but, the VA they accept basically anyone from the VA who are ill or injured or wounded. And I think that kind of includes all of us. And if you have MS, you definitely will qualify for that program. But the specific things that you get to do will probably depend on your region. I mentioned the Project Healing Waters fly fishing, which is a pretty cool program dedicated to that physical and emotional rehab for active military people.
Okay.
And so those are just a few places to look. If you find that, again, the the grant program is on the VA website, you can look up who is actually receiving that grant, and you can see basically what state, you might qualify.
Yeah, excellent. So what type of national events does the VA offer?
So the national events, there's a lot. Again, we have the Winter Games, the Summer Games, the Wheelchair Games. A lot of these things have been put on hold due to the pandemic. And unfortunately, I am not as familiar. I don't participate in all of these. I wish I got to. But typically, our recreational therapy is where a lot of that is held. But they're great ways for veterans to get together, build relationships, and stay active. And if you have a desire to golf or participate in any kind of sporting or creative arts, I would look those games up. Yeah.
Okay. So how could somebody learn more about these programs and services?
So the first thing to do would be to contact sports4vets@va.gov. That is an email, and you can ask them about national VA rehab events. And they basically go over all the things that I mentioned. The website, and I found this one, I think MS Navigator that's online right now can help you with that, is www.blogs.va.gov/NVSPSE. And that is their VA Adaptive Sport and Therapeutic Art website. And there's a bunch of links there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
National MS Society also has some great resources to learn more about exercise and lifestyle physical activities. Where can somebody find this information?
So you can look on the MS website. As I've already mentioned, the Pathways to Wellness is a great place to kind of learn about the latest research, learn about latest evidence-based exercise and lifestyle physical activity recommendations. And that's where I would start, the Pathways to Wellness program.
Okay, thank you. In just a moment, we're going to share the MS Navigator information on the screen with you guys. But for now, we've covered a lot of information today. So Dr. Dons, what are your top 3 takeaways that you would like our audience to remember?
So the first thing is routine. Getting a regular amount of sleep, going to bed at the same time, developing, that routine is so important. It builds the base for everything that you do. The second thing would be to get in, have a location, whether it's in your home or somewhere in your community that you go to exercise, that is a part of your routine and can help you kind of be consistent with what you're going to do. Getting that location and maybe having someone that you're going to be accountable to, so that you either can do it with them in a group or someone who can be there for you when things are not working out. And finally, tell everyone it's got to be something that you enjoy and something that that brings you life. If it's not something that you like, you're not going to continue to do.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. Dons. Thank you to all of you who submitted your comments and questions. And again, thank you, Dr. Dons, for being with us today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know that I've even learned a lot. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Before we close, I'd like to highlight some key resources. You will find these key resources on the slides that have just popped up on your screen. We have the MS Navigator services. As always, MS Navigators are your partner in connecting you to reliable information and resources on MS, including emotional support resources. You can reach them via phone, email, and through the Society's website via chat. Exercise. To find out more information about exercise and physical activity for people living with MS, visit the nationalmssociety.org/exercise. And again, you can find all of these websites below or on your screen as well. Okay. For veterans, to learn more about veterans and MS, you can also visit the nationalmssociety.org/veterans. And the VA's website. To learn more about the VA's Multiple Sclerosis Centers of Excellence, visit the va.gov/MS. Visit the VA website to learn more about the resources we talked about today, including adaptive sports and therapeutic arts and the whole health program. There's also connections programs. The Society brings people together through connections programs like self-help groups, MS Friends Helpline, and paired programming, and the National MS Society community in Facebook. To find a group just for veterans and active duty military or learn more about how you can get involved, you can also go to the MS Society's website. The Elite Warrior Project podcast is designed to educate and empower active duty service members and veterans diagnosed with MS by providing expert interviews to get information and resources they deserve, as well as to provide a platform where veterans can share their real life challenges and triumphs of living with MS. Check out our latest episodes on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Last but certainly not least, don't just ride. The Bike MS is more than the ride of a lifetime. Whether you want to cross the finish line in person or take on a new challenge from anywhere, there's a Bike MS event that's right for you. Register at bikems.org. You can connect with the National MS Society and others affected by MS via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I encourage you to like, subscribe, and/or get on the Society's mailing list to continue to receive up-to-date information on MS and updates on upcoming programs. Thank you again, Dr. Dons, for sharing your knowledge and for everyone's engagement in today's program. The recording will be made available on the Society's website at www.nationalmssociety.org/MS expert. I invite you to join us on November 16th for our next Ask an MS Expert Veterans Program. Lastly, it is important to get your feedback on today's program. You will see a survey pop up when we close out this webinar. Completing the survey does make a difference, and it only takes 1 minute to complete. The information you provide helps us continually improve and shape future segments. We appreciate all of your guys' participation, and thank you for being here with us today. We will see you next time.